7 times shall I be reborn, and with each return I shall bear infinite gratitude for my country. Like the brave samurai of the 14th century, Tsunoki Masashige, my spirit will live eternally through my deeds. 7 times shall I be reborn, and with each return I shall bear infinite gratitude for my country.
In 1945, Mitsuo Saeki was an ensign in the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Force. He flew as fighter escort with the dreaded kamikazes on a number of their suicide bombing missions off Okinawa. Today, he is a major in the Japanese Self-Defense Force and is stationed in Tokyo. Hunter Robbins was a lieutenant aboard an American destroyer that engaged in an epic battle against the kamikazes during the Battle of Okinawa. Today, he is an industrial real estate broker in the San Francisco area.
Shooting at the kamikaze planes diving our ships was like throwing potatoes. That's how small was your chance of stopping. You hated to see them coming, but at the same time, you couldn't deny the courage of these pilots.
Off Okinawa in the Western Pacific, the lives of Mitsui Saeki and Hunter Robbins came together for a brief moment. 2 fighting men, 1 Japanese, 1 American, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. The road to Japan, as far as the Americans were concerned, consisted of giant steps from Guadalcanal to New Guinea, to Guam, to Mindanao, to Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Okinawa is only 350 miles from the main Japanese islands. It was essential to carry out the bombing that would finish the empire. The Japanese High Command said, here the rise or fall of Imperial Japan will be decided. Running generally north and south, Okinawa is 60 miles long and from 2 to 18 miles wide. It is mountainous in the north. The south is mostly rolling hills, honeycombed with cliffs and caves. The invasion of this island poses problems not encountered in previous island assaults by the Americans. Okinawa lies within easy flying range of planes based in Japan. While American transport and supply are stretched farther than ever before, the Japanese supply lines are short. There can be no surprise. The Japanese know, and the Americans know they know. An attack on Okinawa is imminent. Most of Japan's flyers and planes in China and Southeast Asia have been ordered back to the homeland. 1 pilot returning from Singapore is Ensign Mitsuo Saeki.
Watakushi wa Nakajima Kichi kara. I have been ordered to report from Nakajima to Kagoshima Aerodrome in Kyushu. On our way, my comrades and I passed Tokyo. Much of the city is destroyed from firebombing. We vow to fight the enemy to the death for what he has done to our homeland. When we arrive at Kagoshima, I am assigned to a fighter squadron. We are given both defensive and offensive assignments. We are to fight as interceptors against American B-25 and B-29 bombers. Later, we will fly escort for the kamikaze attack that will stop the American invaders. Kamikaze means divine wind. It comes from the 13th century when Japan was threatened by a Mongol invasion. Just as the enemy fleet approached our shores, a divine storm destroyed every ship and so preserved our land. To this day, Nippon has never been invaded, nor will it ever be. Again, the divine wind is with us. This time, it will strike with planes and bombs. I was on Cebu in the Philippines when the Kamikaze Corps was first organized. I wanted very much to volunteer for this sacred duty. But since I was not a veteran pilot, the honor could not be mine. Now I wish to volunteer again. I am told I cannot. Pilots with my experience are needed more for fighter duty. Only the new men are assigned to kamikaze training.
Kyushu, the southernmost island of Japan proper, is turned into a huge complex of air bases. Fighter squadrons are rushed there to provide fighter escort for the planned kamikaze attacks on American warships around Okinawa. The kamikaze pilots, too, are on Kyushu in training for their divine mission. Kamikaze attack is not new to the Americans. They received their first trial by suicide during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. The weapon is not extraordinary, but the will behind it is. March 1945. Admiral Mark Mitcher's Carrier Task Force 58 sails to within 100 miles of Kyushu and sets out to neutralize Japanese air power on that island. The next day, the Japanese strike back hard, using both standard and kamikaze bombing techniques. Is knocked out of commission. The carrier Wasp and destroyer Halsey Power are seriously damaged. Suffering less serious damage are the carriers Enterprise and Yorktown. 737 Americans are killed, 563 wounded. The Japanese lose heavily too. American pilots claim 528 kills. Task Force 58 has succeeded in its purpose. Kyushu-based planes won't be able to strike back in strength for 2 weeks. U.S. forces preparing for Okinawa are aware their biggest danger will come from these human bombs. Kamikaze is topic #1 throughout the American Pacific Fleet. Aboard the U.S. destroyer Hugh W. Hadley is Communications Officer Lieutenant Hunter Robbins, a veteran of the Pacific War since Guadalcanal.
We're escorting a convoy heading for the Caroline Islands. Our ship is spanking new, commissioned just 2 months ago and loaded with anti-aircraft guns. We feel lucky to have a crew made up of destroyer veterans from both the Atlantic and Pacific. Name any battle fought in this war, and somebody on board's been in it. Our skipper's name is Baron Joseph Mullaney. What I particularly like is that he's not the nervous Aunt Nellie type that can't make decisions under pressure. Our gunnery officer is another Irishman, Patrick Henry McGann from Sandusky, Ohio. Pat and I did Liberty together before leaving Pearl. It was a rather fatalistic night. Pat kept saying, "We're not coming back from this one. No, sirree, we're not coming back." What I kind of suspected was just an excuse for us to have another drink. We've dropped anchor off Ulithi Atoll. Something big's in the making. The large number of ships here spells that. Back in the rough days at Guadalcanal, the entire American fleet in the Pacific consisted of no more than 3 dozen ships. Now, it runs into the thousands.
Late March. The Okinawan invasion force under command of Admiral Raymond A. Spruance has assembled in 3 staging areas, at Leyte, Saipan, and Ulithi. More than 500,000 servicemen, over 300 warships, and more than 1,100 troop transports and auxiliary vessels are drawn into the operation. General Simon Bolivar Buckner, commander of the 10th Army, heads the ground forces. These consist of the 24th Army Corps and the 3rd Amphibious Marine Corps. Counting the reserves, 183,000 troops in all. The greatest expeditionary force of the entire Pacific War sets sail for Okinawa. Awaiting them on that island is the Japanese 32nd Army, commanded by Lieutenant General Mitsuru Oshijima. 80,000 regular Army troops plus 20,000 conscripted Okinawans. And in the air, the dreaded kamikaze. In the early hours of Easter Sunday, April 1st, the Central Pacific Task Forces stand off the shores of Okinawa, poised to invade that island, the last major stepping stone before Japan itself. It is L-Day, Landing Day. American soldiers and Marines quickly establish an 8-mile-long beachhead on the west coast. Japanese resistance is surprisingly light. By midday, the jubilant invaders have a new name for L-Day, Love Day. Before nightfall, the invaders have captured 2 airfields and in 2 days have crossed the island. Resistance is still minor. The biggest problem, the housing and care of thousands of Okinawan civilians, women, children, and old men. Except for a pocket of resistance on the Motobu Peninsula, the northern and central portions of Okinawa fall quickly, as does most of the south. But when the attackers reach the southern eighth of the island, their romp turns into a painful crawl. They have reached General Oshijima's line of defense, the Naha-Shuri-Yonabaru line.
We've been on general quarters since early this morning, and it's surprising that no enemy planes have come around. Still, nobody's relaxing. And already I can feel that old tension starting to mount between us. Just one wrong word from somebody and you're ready to jump all over them.
Only this morning, news reached us that Americans have converged on Okinawa. The first flight of kamikaze has its orders. Aircraft carriers are #1 target. Second, all ships with troops, then battleships and cruisers. If every kamikaze destroys 1 ship, then even with 10,000 ships, the enemy cannot hope to win. Every kamikaze pilot is spiritually prepared, confident he can destroy the enemy. In dying, he knows that his body may disappear, but not his spirit. The spirit lives on, continues from generation to generation like a noble light, giving to every man the courage to fight for emperor and country.
April 6th, 699 Japanese planes, more than half of them kamikaze, roared down on the U.S. fleet off Okinawa.
Sure, there are frightening aspects to this kind of attack, but I personally tend to discount that it is sheer fanaticism. It's a tool of battle, and men will resort to it whenever they feel it necessary to turn the tide in their favor. Colin Kelly did the very same thing when he crashed his plane into a Japanese warship early in the war.
At day's end, 2 destroyers, a high-speed mine layer, and an LST are sunk. Damaged, the light aircraft carrier San Jacinto, 10 destroyers, 2 destroyer escorts, a mine layer, 4 minesweepers, and 2 smaller vessels. The Kamikaze Corps has delivered its most fearsome blow so far. A thrill of hope courses through the Japanese military. The Kamikaze, like the earlier Divine Wind, will blast the enemy out of the sea.
More kamikaze are ready. Both the Imperial Army and Navy have joined in Special Attack Forces designated Kikusui, symbolized by the banner of Kusunoki, the loyal samurai retainer. This morning, I went to bid farewell to a friend from my province. I offered him some botamochi, made of rice and wrapped in sugar and beans. He refused it, saying, "I must keep myself fit for my mission." Finally, we shook hands, and I asked if there was any last message for his mother. He said, "No, I am going, and my mother knows. What more is there?" All I could reply was, "I will follow you soon." 3 hours later, he was dead.
On April 11th and 12th, the Japanese launched their second Kikusui attack with 185 planes.
We also have a new type weapon, a flying bomb, which we call Oka, or cherry blossom. It is carried to the target by a bomber, then launched with a pilot. Like a tender blossom, this bomb will burst for a moment in shining glory, then perish forever. But the brave deed shall live on, just as the spirit of Kusunoki lives on.
Naval intelligence has told us about the glider bombs the Japanese are using, capable of coming in at 500 miles an hour. Our sailors call them baka bombs. Baka means fool. But again, I can't help but admire the courage of the enemy.
The Americans who have grown overconfident early in the Okinawa campaign are serious now. At sea, the kamikaze is dealing a fiery hand of death. On land, Ushijima's troops are holding firm. While the ground forces battle evenly, warships of the U.S. fleet act as overpowering mobile artillery. The defenders have nothing to match this.
Orders were received for our ship to take over as fighter direction ship on the picket line. Word came through Fleet Circuit that our sister ship, the Aaron Ward, absorbed 6 suicide hits this morning. She was out at post number 7 on the picket line, our defense perimeter 60 miles north of Okinawa. Apparently, the kamikaze are going after the first ships they spot, so every ship on the picket line is catching hell.
The big question now, can the supporting fleet hold out against the damaging kamikaze attacks? Ranking naval officers are grateful that the kamikaze expends most of its fury on the picket outposts, instead of on the capital ships and troop transports off the beaches of Okinawa.
Last night, American bombers raided Honshu with firebombs. My squadron had success in shooting down 2 planes. We have slept only 3 hours when orders come to escort more kamikaze to Okinawa. These pilots are younger now. They have very little training and fly recklessly. We fighter pilots feel sorry for them, but we also joke about it. When someone in our squadron makes a bad maneuver, we all say, "You're ripe for the kamikaze corps." We laugh, for we know that sooner or later, all of us will die fighting. The important thing is to make each death count.
We've been on the line less than 6 hours. I'm in the ship's Combat Information Center checking the radar screen. A formation of bogies is heading right for us.
Flight is approaching the ring of enemy ships. We spot American fighters coming from below. The kamikaze planes and Oka bombs strike for the first possible target. And my squadron turns to meet the enemy fighters.
On May 11th, 150 Japanese planes take part in the 6th Kitsui raid. About one-third of these attack picket post number 15, which is occupied by the destroyers Evans and Hadley and 4 small landing craft.
We've taken a hit smack in the middle, and all communications are out. Fire is threatening us. McGann and his boys keep up the ack-ack fire. A second bogey is dead on us, and everyone dives for cover. The last kamikaze to hit us plowed right through my bunk. When we finally clear the mess, we find a young pilot practically on top of his engine. He couldn't have been more than 19. His sacrifice cost us 30 dead and 60 wounded.
The Evans and Hadley are both knocked out of battle, but they claim to have taken 37 Japanese planes with them. 37 planes is a cheap price for the Japanese to pay for 2 powerful warships. As wild-eyed and fanatical as the kamikaze concept of war appears, it's the only chance the Japanese have left. On June 24th, the 6th Marine Division makes an amphibious attack on the Oraku Peninsula to cut off thousands of Japanese, killing 5,000. At last, the defenders begin to surrender. The mop-up begins. July 2nd, the Okinawa campaign is declared ended. Mitsuo Saiki piloted a fighter plane till the end of the war. On VJ Day, like millions of his countrymen, he found it difficult to believe that it was over. Hunter Robbins received a Bronze Star for his part in saving trapped seamen aboard the Hadley after it was struck by a kamikaze. He remained with the stricken ship as it was towed across the Pacific to the United States, where it was decommissioned. The Americans suffered 49,151 battle casualties in taking Okinawa. The Japanese lose approximately 110,000 dead or missing, nearly 100,000 on land alone. The Okinawa campaign filled the victors with just about as much foreboding as it did the losers. If the Japanese contested this island so bitterly, how much harder would they fight in defense of their homeland? The question became academic when the A-bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okinawa was the last battle of World War II.